Today we're going to look evil in the face, and it's not pretty. It's in the face of Jill McKay, the former CEO of Children by Choice, the most aggressive abortion lobby group in the country. And we're going to see how she and that organisation is actually in bed with the Australian Labor Party. And that's today on The Dr. Jo Show. So before we get into today's show, which is going to be a bit disturbing as we look at the way Children by Choice and their former CEO operate and think, can I please ask that you subscribe to this channel? A lot of work goes into producing these episodes, but they're so important to educating and activating Australians on the issue of abortion. So subscribe. And if you're not new here, please comment, share, like, and forward on so that we can grow this movement. All right. So Children by Choice is the most aggressive lobby group in the country for abortion. I mean, the name says it all, doesn't it? Children by choice, not by virtue of the fact that you're pregnant and you have a child. Like the word fetus literally means little one, child. And yet Children by Choice means it should really just be called killing children, because when they say children by choice, you don't have a choice. Once you've had sex and you've got pregnant, you have a child. In fact, their fetal cells stay with you for the rest of your life. You know, they're in your body through an incredible process called microchimerism. But children by choice is not saying that that's a choice, because it's not. It's clearly not. You get pregnant, you have a child. You're pregnant with a child. Children by choice, what they're advocating for is the ability to kill that child and that to be your choice. So it should be called killing children by choice, but, you know, they wouldn't do that because no one would buy it, no one would get on board. And today we're going to do a deep dive into the CEO's testimony at a parliamentary inquiry in Queensland. So her name is Jill McKay, and she, at the time of giving this evidence, was the CEO of Children by Choice. This inquiry was about a bill that Robbie Katter introduced, which would have given protection to a child who survives their abortion in Queensland. Let's take a look at the first clip.
I'm here today presenting on a bill that deeply affects the health care of women in this state, and I'm doing so in front of a committee composed of 6 men.
Oh, give me a break.
I respect that each of you have been duly elected. I respect that deeply. And I trust that you are here to represent the very best interests of your Queensland electorates. However, I must reflect on the irony of this situation. It is a reminder of the importance of including women's voices in discussions and decisions about our own healthcare.
How's the irony, guys? Here's Jill McKay, the CEO of Children by Choice, presenting for a panel of politicians who are all men, and she's saying that this is a discussion and women need to be present for it because it's about our reproductive health care. How's the irony of her using her power and privilege as an adult female when all of the babies who her organisation seeks to kill, and in fact this parliamentary inquiry is about the rights of babies who have been born, who are struggling on metal kidney dishes to breathe and who are not entitled to life-saving treatment under Queensland law. How is the irony of her speaking up about why women aren't present on that panel of politicians when there's not a single baby who ever gets to tell their story, whoever gets to vote for a politician, whoever has the power and privilege to speak before a parliamentary inquiry and to be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars and to have the links to the union movement and the Labor Party that this woman has. And here she is on her high horse lecturing us about the fact that she really hopes that the men on that panel think about the women. And then there's the irony that she's berating the politicians for being men when I wager you $100, guys. $100 I will pay if someone can prove me wrong on this. I wager you that Jill McKay cannot even define what a woman is.
The Act carefully balances the rights of the pregnant person with the professional obligations of the healthcare providers.
So this is the kind of person we're dealing with, guys. Jill McKay, CEO of Children by Choice, can't tell you what a woman is, but insists that women need to be in the room. Go figure. I mean, she believes that men can get pregnant. She probably supports chest feeding. All right, leaving that aside, let's see what she says next.
The proposed amendment, however, introduces an unnecessary layer of complexity to accessing healthcare.
So I love how they say this stuff, and it's just 100% not true. Let's take a look at the proposed amendment. So this is the Termination of Pregnancy Live Births Amendment Bill. It's a bill that has only one substantive section, so it is not a complex amendment bill. It's got one section that does something. The other sections are just purely administrative. So The relevant section is that it's proposing that in Queensland abortion law, we would insert a new section 9A. That's why it's an amendment bill. It's amending an act that already is in force. And what Robbie Katter has put in is a very simple section, actually, which says care of person born after termination. So this is a baby who survives their abortion. And it says this section applies if a termination results in a person being born. I mean, that's pretty simple to understand. So it's if the abortion results in a person being born. And it then says nothing in this act prevents a relevant person for the termination from exercising any duty to provide the person who is born with medical care and treatment that is A, clinically safe, and B, appropriate to the person's medical condition. So what that is saying is that nothing in this act stops a healthcare worker from providing relevant medical care to a person who survives their abortion. And then section 3 says it in a different way, but is essentially saying the same thing, just for clarity. So it says 3, to avoid any doubt, it is declared that the duty owed by a registered health practitioner to provide medical care and treatment to a person born as a result of a termination is no different than the duty owed to provide medical care and treatment to a person born other than as a result of a termination. So section 3 there, subsection 3, is clearly just saying you got two babies. One survived the abortion, the other didn't. They were not even going to be aborted. They were just born, like you and I. No one was trying to kill them. It's not miraculous that they were born. They were just intended to be born. But this one, they miraculously survived their abortion. Now, in these two cases, these babies should be treated the same. Now, we shouldn't have to have a law about that. We shouldn't have to have Robbie Katter bring in this amendment with great controversy because it's upsetting the abortion establishment. That should just be common sense, right? You got two babies, they're born, you treat them the same. Equal treatment under the law, that's birth equality. I mean, I thought we were all Australian and that's what we believed. But no, this amendment clarifies that if a baby survives their abortion, even though you intended to kill them, they've now survived, they need to be treated like a person and given equal treatment under the law. Now, Jill McKay, the CEO of Killing Children by Choice, she says, well, that adds complexity. It adds unnecessary, unworkable complexity to give equal treatment to a baby who survives their abortion.
An amendment would be stigmatising to those who seek and provide abortions. It implies a need for legislative intervention in what should remain a medical decision guided by the expertise and judgment of qualified healthcare professionals.
Not all stigma is bad, guys. I mean, we want to stigmatise bad things like pedophilia, child abuse, rape, domestic violence. They should be stigmatised because they're bad. And so, here she says an amendment that gives birth equality, that allows a baby who survives their abortion to be treated no differently to any other baby born in Queensland. She said that would be stigmatising of the healthcare professional, of the abortion. No, I mean, it's stigmatising because the baby has survived. And these guys, they just want to sweep it under the rug. They don't even want you to know that there's a baby. This whole killing by children by choice movement is about leading you to believe, brainwashing you to think that this baby is just a clump of cells. They're a parasite. They're a part of the mother's body like any other cell that she has. And it's not killing. It's just, ending a pregnancy. It's just removing some tissue. That's what they want you to believe. And so, of course, it's stigmatising when you've done an abortion and a newborn baby is delivered. And not only have they been delivered, but they're actually alive and they're breathing, they're struggling to breathe, they're writhing. And she says, we've already got existing regulations and the healthcare workers, we can leave it up to, their professional obligations. But these aren't healthcare workers, these are killers. Let's be really clear about this. Any doctor, nurse or midwife who is involved in the process of ending the life of an innocent baby in utero, they are a killer. They have killed that baby. They have participated in the murder of that child. That is what it is. And so I don't trust them. I mean, the CEO of Killing Children by Choice, Jill McKay, seems to be able to trust them to do what's in the best interests of the mother and the child. I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't really hear her say that, but she did say we can leave it up to the healthcare professionals to work this out. I mean, I don't think that that's the case because these are people whose literal job is to kill that child. That child has survived, and she now wants us to believe that they're going to do what's in the best interest of that child, and we don't need a legislative amendment. She says that we can trust them to go from being the child's killer to being the child's saviour. I mean, does that sound plausible to you? It doesn't sound plausible to me. And let's look at the data from Queensland. We can see that, in 2022, she says, oh, well, the existing law and guidelines is fine. We can see that 49 babies survived their abortion and were then left to die in Queensland in a state that does not have a legislative right to equal care under the law. In this same parliamentary hearing, Louise Adset, a Queensland midwife of 14 years, gave evidence that in her hospital ward, babies survive their abortion and are left routinely in witches' hats, which is like a plastic urine dish. And she talks of a baby who lived for over 5 hours, struggling to breathe, crying. She breaks down in tears as she tells the parliament this story of what happened in her own hospital ward. And then here you have this like monstrously evil woman from Killing Children by Choice saying, oh, existing laws are fine. And clearly they're not, Any reasonable person, like maybe Jill McKay walked into that room thinking the existing laws were fine, but she heard Louise Adset's testimony, a midwife from the Queensland health system, talking about how these little babies survive their abortions and are dumped in witches' hats and sometimes surviving for hours upon hours. So you'd heard my testimony. I gave evidence to that inquiry, and I showed how in peer-reviewed journal articles, in fact, a big study in the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology of 241 late-term abortions, where feticide wasn't given, 1 in 2 babies survived. One baby even survived for over 4 hours, for 267 minutes. The average survival time was 32 minutes. And here's Jill McKay saying, oh, it's fine. We don't need to do anything about it. Not to mention baby Xantha, who just down the road from the Parliament at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital in 2020 survived her abortion and was dumped in an empty hospital room for 7 minutes on a metal kidney dish alone behind a closed door. No one knows how she felt, what she experienced. But Jill McKay from Killing Children by Choice says that's fine.
I wanted to know, though, can you explain where the bill affects the health outcomes of women?
What happens is that potentially through abortion is that the conversations that I've heard here today and some of the places from our other witnesses have really talked around this alarmist kind of space that people seeking an abortion have no feelings or consideration or emotion into that space.
Is it just me? Or every time someone from the abortion brigade gets up, they use a sing-song voice. It's like this whole, I shouldn't have to tell you this. Abortion is very distressing for women and they need it and, they're not getting it for frivolous reasons. And it's like this patronising lecturing of anybody who dares dissent from the pro-abortion establishment. And so she's saying to these men, you have no right to speak up for these babies because you're men and because women's pain, and no one's denying that women who go for abortions might be distressed, they might be anxious. In fact, I believe that the vast majority of women who go for abortions are probably quite distressed. But that doesn't take away from the fact that in this situation, you have two distinct legal persons. You've got a mother who's gone in for an abortion and then you've got a baby who survived that abortion. At the moment of birth, under Queensland law, or at the very least it should be the case under Queensland law, they have rights as an independent legal person. And a health worker needs to be able to address the rights of that baby and give them care as well as the mother. And this whole patronising song and dance that she's doing, there is no substance to it because she cannot address the simple point. Like the question that was asked of her was, how does this even affect the health outcomes of women, this bill? How does it affect them? And she couldn't answer it the way that she should have, which is the truth. The bill has no impact on the health outcome of a woman because the abortion has happened. So nothing more needs to happen to her body. All we're debating is whether this little baby should receive medical care.
If you could imagine 2,500 conversations with people who are seeking to have a conversation about their body, that personal, intimate space between finding out they're pregnant, and also the experiences across their lives and their lifestyles, or their experiences of poverty, discrimination, poor health care, sexual assault, domestic and family violence, to make an assumption that there is one straight line to either you have the capacity, or we all have equal capacity to care for children, that speaks further and more specifically to the inequality in our community and the way in which women's experience true parity in Queensland. So making those decisions wide, broad and complicated, and our perspective is to work with the person who's in front of us to support them to make the decision that they wish to make around their own reproductive health, their own bodily autonomy and their own life.
So that was a total word salad. I don't know if you got that, but it was like a shopping list of like left disadvantaged groups, and it made no sense. Like in the middle of it, she's like equal parity. Like it was just a nonsensical mishmash word salad with her left-wing buzzwords. But let's try. Let's just, for the sake of, Jill McKay and everybody else and who might be watching this, let's just try and grapple with what she's saying. So she lists a whole lot of factors which might make it hard for parents, domestic violence, poor finances, lots of different types of socioeconomic disadvantage. Now, she then says, well, people don't have equal capacity to care for children. But I think she's missing the fundamental point. Like, it's not about their capacity to care for children, it's their capacity to have children. Like they have got pregnant and they have a child. Now, they might not be able to raise that child, but that's what the adoption system is for. If they don't want to raise that child because they don't have the capacity to, we're dealing here with born children. We're dealing with babies who have survived their abortion. And the question is, do we give them life-saving treatment if appropriate, or palliative care if they're not going to survive? But do we give them humane treatment under the law? And if they do survive by some miracle, they can go into the adoption system. Or do we just discard them like medical waste? And Jill McKay's on the side of medical waste. That's the side that she is on. And I really want to underscore for you that this is a true and tried and tested method from the left. When they are trying to justify something absolutely horrendous, which is what this is, it's leaving babies to die who have survived their abortion. When they're trying to justify something absolutely disgusting, what they do is they use a tragic story and they weaponize your compassion. They abuse you, they manipulate you because they know you want to care for the person in front of you. And Ali Beth Stuckey calls this toxic empathy. So what she's doing here is she's saying, think about the poor woman who, maybe doesn't have a house, maybe is a victim of violence, maybe just does not have the gifts or capacity to care for a child. How horrible it would be for them. And she's doing that to take your mind off the fact that here is a little baby, let's think of Jessica Jane or baby Xantha, on a metal kidney dish, struggling to breathe, crying their little lungs out, trying to gasp for air, going from the place where they're safest to a cold, dark room, and no one to even pick them up and hold them. And she doesn't want you to focus on that. So she tells you all about the woman and the tragic circumstances she faces. And she says that, for killing children by choice, when the 2,500 people call them asking for advice, and these are very vulnerable people, but killing children by choice, they funnel them into abortion. They pick up that phone and they are in bed with the Australian Labor Party, with Emily's List, and we're going to get to that in a moment, but they are so into abortion, even though they call themselves an all-options pregnancy service, when in reality they are obsessed with abortion. That is what they lobby and advocate for, and they have pro-abortion politicians like Larissa Waters on their board because that is what they care about. That is literally their religion, it's abortion. So when someone calls them for advice and she says, we give our advice to that person. But again, it underscores who they're not giving their advice to the innocent baby who has no rights, voice, or capacity to even make that phone call. Their vulnerability is so compounded in this situation. It's such an extreme power imbalance that the adult has all the power, the child has none, and killing children by choice, they just further embed that power imbalance and they entrench it and exacerbate it.
If someone were to call it 35 weeks or 30 weeks and say, look, my financial circumstances have changed, I want to have an abortion, what sort of advice or counsel would you give to someone?
That's a place for that person to engage with their medical health professionals, and then it would also be our place to have a conversation about their personal health and well-being.
So let's get this straight. Someone wants to kill their baby at 35 weeks. They literally want to inject their baby's heart, their fully developed baby, their close to full-term baby, with poison in the heart so that baby's in searing agony, and then they want to go through the processes of labour and deliver that baby stillborn. Someone calls Children by Choice, and Children by Choice says, let's talk about it. Let's discuss your health and how you're feeling. No, I mean, how monstrously evil is that? Like, I have no words for this because I just feel so overwhelmed by the fact that this is even a conversation. At 35 weeks, Children by Choice should be telling that woman, that baby is so close to coming out, that baby has known your voice, that baby hears you, that baby has bonded with you. Look, if you are really struggling, let's talk about early delivery. Let's talk about getting that baby out alive, but we cannot talk about abortion. We cannot be talking about abortion at 35 weeks, but that is not Jill McKay, the CEO of Killing Children by Choice's response. Hers is when someone asks that question, oh, let's talk about that and see what your options are. I mean, what? And the other point I want to take away from this is for all of those people who write comment after comment saying abortion up to birth is not legal. All over my page, we get these comments from naysayers on social media saying abortion up to birth is not legal for any reason. She was asked a direct question. What would you do if a mum wanted to kill her healthy baby at 35 weeks? And she didn't turn around and say, it's not legal, it's not possible. She said we would have a conversation. And we all know how that conversation would go when you've got this woman on the other end of the phone line. It would be, oh, you want to have an abortion at 35 weeks? Well, let's book it in. Can anyone think of a reason that Jill McKay from Killing Children by Choice would ever say is an unacceptable reason for killing your baby at 35 weeks? I mean, she's literally into killing children by choice. So what would be acceptable for Jill McKay? To turn a woman away who wanted an abortion?
When we talk about, if you want to refer back to 35 weeks, some of these very, very difficult conversations are about fetal anomalies. They're heartbreaking, and sometimes people will not have an attachment to that fetus, and to make an assumption that that is a lack of care from a mother, to not want to hold comfort, is deeply, deeply disturbing.
What's actually disturbing is how sick this woman is. I mean, she is callously, coldly talking about injecting a 35-weeker with poison into the heart and delivering them dead. And, you know, on the one hand, she's saying, oh, well, the baby might be severely disabled. So, like, yeah, it's fine to do them in. And then on the other hand, she's saying, and also, you know, a mum with a 35-week-old fetus, as she calls it, they just might not have any attachment to that baby. So, you know, if they survive their abortion, they shouldn't have to hold them or care for them. I mean, that's not mandated under the law anyway, under the amendment that Robbie Katt is seeking to introduce. It's not saying that the mother who went in for the abortion must hold her baby after birth. No, the amendment just says that we treat this child no differently, that they have an equal right to medical care, that somebody holds that baby and gives that baby food and water and nourishes that baby and helps that baby. Just that's what the amendment is. But, you know, just think about this for a minute. Jill McKay says it's morally abhorrent. In fact, it's gravely wrong to judge a woman who doesn't want to hold her 35-week-old newborn baby. And in fact, the answer is to leave that baby in an empty room like Xantha on a metal kidney dish so that they die behind a closed door. She says it's wrong to judge the woman. And yet the thing that we need to remember is that this newborn baby, you know, they're just like any other Australian child. Like, you know, that we judge women adversely for child neglect all of the time. You know, that there are laws to protect innocent children from being malnourished or discarded or abused. In fact, this headline that I saw on the ABC website, SA Coroner's Court to begin an inquest into baby's death in a house littered with feces, rotting food and cockroaches. You know, I mean, there's normally a coronial inquest when we discard babies like trash. And yet here, what Jill McKay is saying, that this baby, you know, that we don't even want to think about them because it's wrong to judge the mother. And, you know, the reality is here is this baby who survives their abortion, they deserve to be held, they deserve to be fed, they deserve to be given milk, they deserve to be cared for, named, loved, and buried if need be, if they're not going to survive. They don't deserve to be born, dumped on a metal kidney dish, given no oversight or care, alone in an empty room and then discarded after their death like medical trash. this woman, Jill McKay, the CEO of Killing Children by Choice, she's just an evil witch from a Disney fairy tale. Like, she's like the woman that you get nightmares about, like Cruella de Vil when you're a kid and you get nightmares about the Disney villain. That's who she is. She's an apologist for a barbaric regime that kills children right up until birth. And if by some miracle they survive, she's an apologist for a regime that allows those children to be left to die. So we're obviously all disturbed by Jill McKay, but what's even more frightening is how closely in bed she is and her organisation, Children by Choice, is with the Labor Party. So before she came on board as the CEO of Killing Children by Choice, she was actually working with former Premier Stephen Miles at the Together Union. So Jill McKay and the Premier, Labor Premier, were working in the union movement together. She then was recruited to work as the CEO of Killing Children by Choice. And this is kind of how it works with Labor, the jobs for the mates. You know, they go from one cushy job in a union to one job in a pro-Labor lobbying organisation like Children by Choice. And then, this is how it works. And so she's there as the CEO of Children by Choice, and this is how she's giving this evidence. And when she's the CEO of Children by Choice, her former colleague, Stephen Miles, who's now the Premier of Queensland, gives the contract for their $42 million abortion rollout, because Stephen Miles doesn't think it's enough that, Queensland is the abortion capital. The highest number of babies killed by abortion drugs per capita is in Queensland. There's more babies there than New South Wales and Victoria combined. That's how much abortion is happening in Queensland. Stephen Miles doesn't think that's enough, and with Shannon Venninen's help, his health minister, they've rolled out this $42 million access plan. Now, $8 million of that money has gone to Killing Children by Choice, headed up by Jill McKay, without a tender process. There was no tender. There was no opportunity for other organisations to offer to provide that service. This was a behind-the-scenes, closed-door, shady deal for the mates, Labor deals for the mates, with Children by Choice, and Jill McKay and her organisation benefits $8 million. There was no transparency around this money. Imagine if that deal had been done and they'd given that money to, the Australian Christian Lobby or the Catholic Church, and the headlines that you would see from the left-wing media establishment. And yet Children by Choice gets $8 million and nobody bats an eye. And then on top of that, Children by Choice every year, the vast majority of their funding, every year they're getting close to $1 million. It's $891,528 from the Queensland government. This is by far their biggest sort of funding. Like, they would not exist except for this handout from the Queensland government. Why is the Queensland government using your money and my money to fund Killing Children by Choice? Like why are they doing that when they don't even give a cent to pregnancy help centres who actually support women, vulnerable women, to have their children and who don't funnel women into abortion? And then the shadowy links with Labor deepen, because after Labor wins the federal election, we see that Jill McKay is no longer the CEO of Killing Children by Choice, but she's now got a cushy job as the Chief of Staff for the Labor member for Dixon, Ali France. So here we go. We've got Jill McKay in the union movement with Stephen Miles. He then goes on to become Premier. She then goes on to become CEO of Killing Children by Choice. He then gives her $8 million for her pro-killing organisation. She then moves to work as a staffer for another Labor member of Parliament. I mean, this is how it works, and it is just so gross and disturbing. And if we didn't have this channel, you literally wouldn't know about it. So just to bring this all to a close, I actually did want to do a plug, guys, for my new Lifesavers program. It's a monthly donation program that I have emailed my database about. It's a way to ensure that everybody who's working for me now, so we now have over 12 part-time staff who are working for the organisation, seeking to build a new culture in Australia, seeking to change hearts and minds. Every month we're now reaching over 7 million across our 5 social media channels. We've got over 200,000 followers and subscribers on our email database. So this is huge. With our socials following and our database combined, this is a genuine, powerful movement. But I really do need your support. So monthly donations really help, because it means that I know how much money we've got every month, and it just allows me to plan for the future. And we've got pro-life bills in the pipeline, ready to go, and campaigns that we need to run around them. So there'll be a link below, but if you could give to the Lifesaver program every month and commit to that, that would be really helpful, no matter how small the donation is. I think our smallest donation that someone's giving is $10 a month. So, whatever you can give, I'm just going to ask you for that. So thank you for watching today, and thank you for your support of this channel, and that's today on The Dr. Jo Show.